Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports Another Football video, and today I'm going over my Week 12 NFL Power Rankings for the 2022 NFL season. I do Power Rankings on the channel every single week. Sorry that this video is coming out a little bit later, but the Chiefs game ran not long, but I needed to wait until the very end of the game to start making this week's Power Rankings. So, let's get right into it. First off, we have the dumpster fire, and the Rams have officially made their way all the way from the elite in week 1 to the dumpster fire in week 12. They've been slowly declining down the ladder, and then this week's loss just put the nail in the coffin. This was another bad team that they lost to, another team that bottom half of the league that just, if this team is going to be doing anything this year, then they need to start winning games, even against okay teams, not even against good teams or great teams, just winning against like okay to bad teams. And then Houston's number 32. I think that's pretty obvious. I think everyone has Houston at 32 and has had Houston at 32 pretty much since the beginning of the season. Moving on, we have the bad teams. We have the Jaguars at 30, we have the Broncos at 29, we have the Raiders at 28, we have the Saints at 27, and we have the Browns at 26. Raiders have gone up a few spots since last week. I believe I had them at 31 last week, so they went up 3 spots with their win over the Broncos. The Broncos defense has been keeping them out of the bottom 4 for a while now, but the loss to the Raiders this week, their defense let up more points than it usually does. This is the second time they've let up over 20 points to the Raiders. Raiders are the only team that they've let up 20 points to, and I think that, although I do believe that the Broncos are arguably a better team than the Raiders because I favor defense, consistent defense over consistent offense. The Raiders have beaten the Broncos twice, so I put the Raiders above the Broncos. The Browns are at 26. They moved up 1 spot from last week with their loss to the Bills. They did move up in a loss, but they did play the Bills very tough. They had a lead for a while. Buffalo came back, got a massive lead, and then they tried to make an effort in the garbage time to try and get some points. Overall, it wasn't the worst game in the world, but they didn't really show me that they are better than bad. Saints are at 27. They were down with the Raiders in the dumpster fire last week. Their win this week brought them back up to number 27. It was a solid win. They did beat the Rams, so kind of expected if you're like me and you expected more from the Saints this year. I really think that with the Saints injuries getting better and better kind of every week, then eventually they'll start meshing. I think that this week was the beginning of that. Their defense has really been the issue the last few weeks. Their offense has looked like a top 5 or top 10 offense recently, closer to top 10. But their defense has really been the biggest issue, and their defense was able to put together a full 60 minutes of defensive football this week, which is something they haven't been able to do recently. The Jaguars are at 30. They had though they didn't play this week. They're at 30 last week. They didn't play this week, and so they just stayed at 30. Moving on, we have some strong games. We have the Panthers at 25, and we have the Bears at 24. The Panthers moved down, I believe, 2 spots from last week. Either 1 or 2 spots from last week in their 3-point effort against the Ravens. They did keep it very close to the Ravens for most of the game, but the Ravens were able to score 10 points to clinch the victory at the end of the game. The Panthers defense played well, which is something that doesn't usually happen, but they did play well, and I have to give them credit for that, but their offense and defense need to play well together, and that doesn't usually happen. That happened in the Tampa Bay game. That hasn't happened a whole lot of other games this season. And until they can start consistently having their offense and defense working on the same page, they can't be a lot higher. Bears are at 24. I really want to believe in their offense. I think that their offense is the only reason why they're at 24. Their defense was the star of their team to start off the season, and then their defense has just looked worse and worse and worse every week. They've lost because of their defense 4 weeks in a row, and their offense is doing well in spite of their defensive failures. Justin Fields looks better and better and better every week, yet the Bears are on a 4-game losing streak. I want to put them higher, but it's just impossible. Packers are at 23. Last week, after they won an upset victory over the Cowboys, I said, win next week, then we'll talk. I put them at 22. They didn't win. I told them to. They decided not to. They lost to Tennessee by 10 points. It wasn't particularly close for most of the game, and so they dropped one spot. I mean, you can't really fault them for losing to a top 10 team, being number 22. I just was really expecting a little bit more life out of the Packers. But yeah, the team that passed them is the Pittsburgh Steelers, or should I say TJ Watt. TJ Watt is now 2-1 on the season. He won the first week of the season, and then he won last week. This week, the Bengals did get the better of the Steelers in a 37-30 victory, but TJ Watt played really well on offense. The Steelers' offense was able to actually score points for the first time this season. They scored 30 points against the Bengals. I think that part of that is because the Bengals' defense is just extremely volatile and not particularly sufficient for a playoff team to do well or go deep, although they did do that last year. But yeah, TJ Watt has been a menace since he's come back, and I think that has revitalized the Steelers a little bit. They did lose this week, but it was a divisional game, and I did bump them up just because everyone else has gotten worse, and the Steelers look like they're trending upward. On the rise, we got the Falcons at 21, we have the Cardinals at 20, we have the Colts at 19, and we have the Lions at 18. Falcons, I don't know, they've been disappointing me lately. I really wanted to believe in them. Every week it just gets harder and harder and harder and harder. Arizona has not played yet. They're playing tomorrow night against the 49ers. If they win that game, they'll probably stay at 20. They might go to 19. They're not getting out of this tier. If the Cardinals win tomorrow, whoop-de-doo. I really don't think that it's a big deal. It's a divisional game. It's a home divisional game. Yeah, not much to say about that. The Colts played a pretty solid game against the Eagles this week. They lost by 1 point. They won last week, and Jeff Saturday and Matt Ryan are working well together. Sam Ehlinger was really the reason why the Colts dropped so much a couple weeks ago. Now Matt Ryan's back. Matt Ryan's looking more like Matt Ryan. He's not throwing as many interceptions. The Colts are looking a little bit more like they did last year, although they are still a couple games below 500. And I do expect the Colts to continue to look better throughout the rest of the season, although their playoff chances are pretty much over. Lions are 18. Detroit has on a, 3-game winning streak? Yeah, so the Lions are looking pretty solid. The Lions are looking like what people thought they're going to look like week 2. Week 2, everyone was thinking that the Lions were going to be this okay, fighting for a playoff spot team. Amon-Ra St. Brown got injured, DeAndre Swift got injured, all of their wide receivers, all of the running backs, everyone was in and out of the lineup for weeks. This week, everyone is pretty much generally back. The last 3 weeks, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been back. DeAndre Swift has been back. Williams has been playing well. Jared Goff has been playing well. The defense has not existed, but the defense existed this week. And because of that, the Lions were able to get another fairly solid win, bringing their streak to 3 in a row. And I think that the Lions are the best team in the bottom half of the league right now. They would be higher, but the team right above them is on an even hotter streak, and everyone else above them is just better. So Lions are at 18. I think that's a pretty solid spot for them. All these teams should be higher. We got Washington at 17, we have the Chargers at 16, and we have the Buccaneers at 15. Washington has put on a show the last few weeks. This week they beat the Texans, so whoop-de-doo. They did not increase from last week's position, but the Washington Commanders are really impressing me right now, and I think that they really should be higher than 17, but it's extremely hard for me to put them higher than that right now. They beat the Eagles last week. It was a divisional game. It was a home game, and it was a very solid win. I wasn't expecting it. There were some missed calls, from my understanding, in that game that may or may not have shifted the game. But that being said, they did beat the Eagles, who were undefeated and the best team in the league. They're 6-5. Taylor Heineke at quarterback is working extremely well for them, and Washington will continue to rise if they beat teams that are not the Houston Texans. The Chargers are another team that really should be higher. They have not increased from last week. Last week they were at 16. This week they remain at 16 with their loss to Kansas City. I almost put them higher because one of the biggest reasons why they had offensive football this week was because Keenan Allen was back and Mike Williams was back. Very similar to the Lions. Their offense is starting to actually get its players back. And Justin Herbert looked like Justin Herbert because all of the players were back. He did throw a pick towards the end of the game because he was desperate. There was 30 seconds left on the clock. But overall, the offense looked extremely strong. The reason why the Chargers are down at 16 is because they still have not played a game that's impressed me this entire season. Not one game. They've lost to Kansas City twice. The 2 losses to Kansas City were their 2 most impressive games of the season. They have 5 wins. The 2 losses to Kansas City were more impressive than all 5 of their wins. And I really want to put the Chargers higher. They deserve to be higher with all of their weapons back. But I need to see them beat a team with their weapons. That's a good win. And it's just not happening. Buccaneers are at 15. They were at 14 last week. They had a bye week this week. They were passed up by one team, so they went from 14 to 15. Volatile. We have the Patriots at 14, the Bengals at 13, the Giants at 12, and the Jets at 11. These teams are the most volatile teams in the league. They can beat anyone and lose to anyone. Not much else to be said there. The Patriots beat the Jets this week. This is the second win over the Jets the Patriots have this season. They have not lost to the Jets since 2015. Part of the reason why the Jets are still above the Patriots on the list is because the Jets have not beaten the Patriots since 2015. And I still think the Jets are a better team right now. I think the Jets are more balanced. We had a lot of good offensive plays, but we didn't score any points off of them. Most of our points, all of our points, except for one field goal, came from a punt return on the last play of the game. And there was an illegal block in the back. That wasn't called. Although I don't think that impeded the play at all. I think that the illegal block in the back was negligible. It was called. It wasn't called, and some people were mentioning it. But either way, the Patriots defense is number 1 in the league, so it's kind of hard to put them any lower than 16. And I think that the 2 wins over the Jets make them deserve to be in the same category. Bengals are at 13. They were at 13 last week. They beat the Steelers. It was a 7-point game. I wasn't expecting it to be a 7-point game. If they blew them out, they'd be higher than 13. But it was a 7-point game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that staying in the same spot as last week is pretty much the same thing as having a bye week. Giants are at 12, Jets are at 11. Both of these teams moved down 4 spots. They were at 7 and 8 last week. And then they were basically just passed by a whole tier because the Jets lost to the Patriots for the second time this season, and their offense looked horrendously bad. I need more from Zach Wilson before the Jets can go back into the top 10. And same thing with the Giants. I need more from Daniel Jones before the Giants can go back into the top 10. They lost to the Lions this week. The Lions beat them pretty significantly. And yeah, I need to see more from Mac Jones. I need to see more from Daniel Jones. I need to see more from Zach Wilson. And I need to see more from the Bengals defense. Serious contenders, we have the Seahawks at 10, 49ers at 9, Ravens at 8, and Titans at 7. The reason why the 49ers have an asterisk, the Seahawks were at 10 last week. They stayed at 10 for this week, or they were at 12 last week, but they were passed up by they passed the Giants and Jets for losing. The reason why the 49ers have an asterisk next to their number is because they play tomorrow night, and I do believe that tomorrow night's game is significant. If the 49ers lose tomorrow night, then the 49ers are going to go to the bottom of the previous tier. The 49ers will be below the Patriots because I do not have faith in this team yet. They have Christian McCaffrey. They played well last week, but that was against the Chargers without their top 2 wide receivers. Their offense couldn't do anything because they didn't have any players. The 49ers are 5-4. I need to see them beat the Cardinals tomorrow by 2 scores for me to think that the 49ers are a top 10 team. They're going to stay at 9, but if they beat the Cardinals by 2 or 3 scores, then they'll go up to 8 or 7. But everyone is very overhyped on the 49ers. I don't understand it currently. I have them at 9 just because the popular opinion is that the 49ers are a top 10 team, but I don't currently believe it because they really haven't had any impressive games, even with Christian McCaffrey. Number 8 is the Ravens, and number 7 is the Titans. The Ravens and Titans just stayed in the same spot, but they moved up because the Jets and Giants moved down. Titans had a strong game over the Packers, and the Ravens had a pretty solid win as well over the Panthers. It was a little too close for comfort, but they still got the job done. Last but certainly not least is the NFL's elite, and I have no idea what to think of any of these teams other than the fact that these are the 6 best teams in the league. Tennessee is knocking on the door. If any one of these teams loses a game against a bad team, Tennessee will jump right into the top 6. The Vikings jumped up to 2 last week after their win over Buffalo, and then they jumped right back down to number 6 after their loss to the Cowboys. This was a demoralizing loss. If the Vikings lose to the Patriots on Thursday Night Football on Thanksgiving, the Titans will take their spot in the number 6 spot. So Vikings fans, be warned, if you do lose to the Patriots, the Titans will be taking your spot. I wasn't a full believer in the Vikings until they beat the Bills, and then the very next week, all of my faith in the Vikings got completely squashed by Dak Prescott and the Cowboys defense. Buffalo's at 5. They were at 6 last week. They moved up because the Vikings moved down. They were on a bye week. Were they on a bye week? No. They beat the Browns. It was a negligible game. They beat the Browns. It was close. Vikings are at 6. Eagles are at 4. The Eagles have gone down last week. I said that they would stay at 1 after the loss to Washington. And then the near loss to the Colts this week made me move them down. They had multiple turnovers 2 weeks in a row. The thing about their team, the reason why they're winning games was because they weren't turning the ball over. They had 3 turnovers in the first 8 games. The last 2 weeks, they've had 6 turnovers. So they had 3 turnovers in 8 games. They had 6 turnovers the last 2. Until the Eagles can go back to conserving the ball, playing solid football on both sides, and playing games like they have been, they're going to stay at number 4. They're not going to go any lower than that, because they are 9-1. But the reason why they won all those games against good teams was because they're taking care of the ball, they're playing good offense, good defense, and they're not doing that right now. Miami's at number 3. The reason why they're number 3 and not number 1 is because they don't have a defense. They have the best offense in the league. Nobody can argue with me on that. Tua has had an insane season with Tyreek Hill. He's had an insane season with Jalen Waddle. The Dolphins' offense is the best offense in the NFL, and I won't hear it from anyone. That being said, they have 0 defense, and that's why they're number 3. The Cowboys are number 2 after their demoralizing victory over the Vikings. They are 7-3, and the reason why they went down last week from 4 to 6 was because of their loss to the Packers and because of the Vikings win over the Bills. So they went down from 6, and then after this 40-3 game, the Cowboys and Vikings just swapped spots, basically. So yeah, Dallas has put up almost 50 points 2 weeks in a row now. Their defense is top 3 in the league. The Cowboys, the Patriots, and the Patriots are the 2 best defenses in the league. And the fact that the Cowboys have an explosive offense to go with that defense, it's kind of hard to argue that they aren't a top 1 or top 3 team. Kansas City's at number 1. They were number 2 last week. The Eagles dropped. They won a divisional game against the Chargers, a strong offensive team, in the Charger Stadium. If you win in the Charger Stadium in a divisional game against Justin Herbert with all of his weapons, and your defense is able to get the stops they need to get, and Patrick Mahomes does Patrick Mahomes things, then Patrick Mahomes can be number 1 in the league. I think that Kansas City's waited long enough to be number 1 in the league after their kind of rocky start, but not really. And I think they will deserve it. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Huge shout out to Quinn Lacey for supporting the channel with a channel membership.